I've got some good news. In 2007, military insider Robert Leroy Horton and his military friends were worried about the banking crisis and researched with their security clearances who was responsible. They found two men by the name of David Wynn Miller and Russell J. Gould, where they found syntaxes in the bundled mortgage contracts, and they sued for grammatical fraud. They took their findings to court, and they won. Now in trouble, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac bundled them up and sold them to Bank of America. 3 days later, Bank of America found out they were sitting on bad paper and sold those to Wells Fargo. And that is how the fire sale started with these phony derivatives and the 2008 crash. David Wynn Miller and Russell J. Gould were the key to exposing the biggest national security secret in United States history. Let's take a step back and find out how they figured this out. After the American Revolution War, the 13 colonies filed their first bankruptcy of the United States. There was a post office downtown in Philadelphia known as the Benjamin Franklin Post Office. It was open until the war started. All war vacates contracts. Keep that in mind. Because the 13 colonies were not a state or nation of their own, they had to close that post office down because they were fighting for their national statehood. After the war, the post office couldn't be opened back up for commerce because it owed 1.6 million francs to France because they funded the American Revolution to begin with. The King of France was arguing with Spain as to who is going to assign a postmaster general for that post office. Why is that important? Well, Spain claimed they had Christopher Columbus, who found America first and had the rights to it, while France argued that, hey, without loaning the francs, America wouldn't even be open for capture. But the King of Great Britain, still being the reigning monarch, told both countries, Britain will put their postmaster general in. America agreed because they were familiar with how Britain operates. And rather than France and Spain, they're just different countries. They didn't really do much commerce with them in that sort of a control fashion. Great Britain then paid off the loan to Spain. They purchased the land that is now called District of Columbia and sent their postmaster general there because it was sovereign land for Britain to operate. If any other country wanted to rape and pillage America for its goods, they would have to go through Great Britain, Washington, D.C., and fight them first. Therefore, all commerce shipped to and from the colonies, Britain got a big cut. So they felt like they had control. The Founding Fathers had a pact that they would never borrow money from the central bankers, like the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank. And that's because those bankers owe no allegiance to any monarch. And monarchs are only as powerful as their armies. So in case of war, they could beat them and not have to pay it back. Later, during the second bankruptcy of the United States, unfortunately, President Abraham Lincoln, after the colonies were broke in half, leaving only the North and the South, violated the Founders' Pact and borrowed money from the international central bankers. That initiated the second financial bankruptcy that led us to the 1933 Federal Reserve Act, the Depression, and the Great Stock Market Crash, which gave the elites absolute power over American citizens. The question that Robert Leroy Horton and his friends, as they were doing all of this research, what they had was, why was there still a syntax grammatical error key on every single mortgage document, and what gave it the power to utilize these mortgage contracts as not fraudulent? How do they even make money? Well, who gave that authority? Your birth certificate. That's right. The U.S. filed for their third bankruptcy on March 9th, 1933. Roosevelt paid off the debt to the International Monetary Fund with all of its gold, your gold. The Federal Reserve Act used the United States citizens as collateral by a private bank called the Federal Reserve, which controlled the U.S. currency by offering loans and profiting off the interest. The loans that didn't get paid back would be given to the American people to pay off, which is called the national debt. Their birth certificate, issued in all caps, if signed by the mother, she basically lawfully agreed to give her baby's life to the Federal Reserve and pay taxes to those private bankers. No one had a clue. On November 2nd, 1999, that entire system of human collateral came to an end when the bankruptcy of 1933 came to an end. The post office in the District of Columbia, owned by Britain, had closed down. The king had to vacate the position. The President of the United States was the administrator of the bankruptcy, and we no longer needed a trustee because there was no longer a bankruptcy. So the president didn't even know what was going on at that time. Britain didn't have a plan or somehow overlooked the bankruptcy. For 18 days, the post office in D.C. was vacant, and David Wynn Miller and Russell J. Gould saw an opportunity to get our freedom back. They had an understanding of the ports, wartime law, maritime law, land law, and with that knowledge, Russell went to the Pentagon and asked if they had a copyright patent on the Title IV flag of the United States. Russell captured the flag and took it to the United Nations immediately. And they said, all of the land on planet Earth has been taken. So what land do you want to choose, Russell? He chose the land of the courts during the time of the contracts, meaning the post office was still shut down and there were no contracts with the highest courts in the United States. The United Nations gave him the authority to be the Postmaster General of the United States, and he kept the evidence and allowed the continuance of commerce open under his authority and no longer under Great Britain. He just seceded the United States from Great Britain's rule. What's funny is the Navy was sitting in all of their foreign ports at that time without a flag because Russell had just taken it. Bill Clinton was in Kosovo when he was informed that the Title IV flag had been captured by Russell. The Navy signed on with Russell in 2003. I mean, there's so much more to the story. It's amazing. Russell J. Gould quietly became the Commander-in-Chief and Postmaster General of the North American continent, which is the United States and Canada. And the reason why is because Canada had always been attached to D.C. Russell owned it. By this time, the U.S. banking constitution came to an end as well. Russell proposed a quantum construct which could track the entire finance and commerce with digital tokens, which inspired cryptocurrencies to this day. Donald J. Trump and the White Hat generals used Russell's accomplishments to take down the deep state. We owe our life to these two men who, by an act of God, removed the deep state's power from the citizens of the United States in such a funky way. And that is why there's such a huge push to make people nationalists right now, by removing themselves from the old guard. This is great news. And when I wrote this today, I was reading this information that I found, and it really makes sense to me. And I'm really proud and happy that, our God loves us so much that just through loopholes like this and people who are paying attention literally can take back a nation just through capturing a flag, getting a piece of paper from the UN, and then bringing it back and claiming the rights. And that's what he did. I'll update you more on this story later. Part 2. Russell Gould, in his documentary called Last Flag Standing, figured out that the post office was the central control for authorizing structures of government. For example, when we file for an LLC, we would file with the Secretary of State or whichever state we are in. However, What they are not telling you is the state would take the fees you pay them and send a payment to the post office as a usury fee for that entity to exist. However, Russell caught the post office in a bankruptcy condition where the post office lost its capacity because it ceased to exist. Those who are in bankruptcy do not have any contract rights. The legal construct of contract comes down to who holds the title for flag or who is the Postmaster General to authorize commerce or federal contractors to bore the terms of that flag. The flag was wrapped up in a bankruptcy in 1999, and Russell Gould and David Wynn filed a copyright on that Title IV flag in terms of a quantum syntax grammar, so that if a federal contractor does come in, they would have to comply with the terms of that syntax to perform the terms of the contract. It's all about performing the quantum syntax grammar they added to the copyright. It's like a code. The deep state cannot move forward with any commerce unless they switch to the quantum structure Gould and Wynn's put into place. Or at least that's what they thought. Russell was fascinated with sentence diagramming and could put together structures of what looks like complicated long passwords, which in turn had a lot of meaning. Now we call them tokens, which can translate a lot of information down to a tiny fraction of a line of code. David Wynn's contribution was in 1988 when he broke the mathematical interface in grammar and proved that all grammar and all languages are mathematical equations of algebra. He was able to rewrite the way grammar was used. Combined, they realized it was the same mechanics that applied on a global level, and their efforts went into an in-depth study of the banking, postal, military, and court mechanics. They figured out a way to change the system permanently for the benefit of the planet. Benjamin Franklin was a French attorney working for the English crown as a secret agent to capture the United States of America. In 1789, the Constitution was drafted, which was a bankruptcy trust, putting America through a 70-year international bankruptcy for $3 million. The Bank of England picked up the note from the Rothschilds family. This turned the United States into an international bankruptcy corporation. The Constitution was written as an adverb pronoun in a style of grammar called a parse. This is what parts of the words are. The English language made parse words, and it bastardized them in code so that words have different meanings. Benjamin Franklin made the people a dead entity and a verb of illusion or fiction. Another way to put it would be lost at sea and they became property at birth. Understanding the real speak of the Constitution, both men got ready for when the bankruptcy ended and would copyright that flag as the treasurer, postmaster, and banker. This means those who choose to come into contract with the Title IV flag must come through the correct grammar construct code or quantum syntax to make it valid, so they can take the terms of their corporation and put it into free venture capitalists. They applied to the United Nations to be an independent country because the conditions of quantum language in a world of 8 million fictional character people with different communication skills was so unique that the 200 members of the United Nations voted to have them have their own country. They had a bank charter, they had a constitution, of course it was all written in quantum language, they had a bank with gold in it, and all of their treaties that are in place with the United States of America, with the Department of Justice, On the 25th of July, 1999, they sued the United States for the flag of the United States under Title IV, Section 1, 2, and 3. They challenged the United States Congress, Senate, legislature, and Supreme Court to bring forth their correct parse, syntax, grammar, sentence structure copyrights of the flag of America. They couldn't do it or produce an oath of office with the correct syntax grammar. On the 12th of August, 1999, the United Nations voted that both Russell and David were independent, sovereign individuals with a flag, a bank, constitution, trust, and had real treaties with other countries. They had to wait for the United States to come out of bankruptcy to file at the Washington, D.C. post office. However, because of David's commitments to other people's interests, he refused to have his name on the contract to claim the flag. Therefore, in a way, he vacated his position as a ship owner and bearer of the flag. The bankruptcy needed someone to come in and re-up the terms for the Constitution. Otherwise, if vacated, the current government could throw away the Constitution and continue moving forward. Russell did it alone and became the Postmaster General in D.C. In the upcoming year of 2000, Russell knew they would have to vacate the President of the United States because Russell held the flag. But the government ignored Russell and his flag. Bush Jr. was elected president. Do you guys remember the Bush versus Gore election and how it took longer than usual? And there was also a recount. Do you remember that? It took days. Could this be a stall of the government waiting for Russell and his approval or response? Or was it the deep state just winking to Russell? Or like they said it was on the television, and it was just a Gore or Al Gore just crying because he didn't win. Well, according to Russell, this presidency was null and void, and he held this secret up until he passed away, I believe. He knew they did not have a flag, military, port, or any department within their construct of government because the founding fathers were not there to sign the continuance. Russell and David's work is proof that the United States government, as it sits right now, has no authority whatsoever since 1999 after the final bankruptcy. Eventually, to trick the people, the Federal Reserve issued a new Postmaster General under their control and continues to hold us into slavery. Just a quick note, I think it was David was the one that passed away. I'm not sure if Russell's still alive, but I'm going to still do some more research on that. But this whole thing is really fascinating. And my goal for this whole report is to find out what is the Donald John Trump connection to quantum and to Russell and David. Thanks, guys. Part 3. The quantum banking system outline was created in 2001 and was filed at the World Bank and International Monetary Fund in December of 2002. The system was based on hard assets that tied to autonomy of sovereignty to allow different concepts of wealth to flourish by the people and not by the banks. Russell found that the International Monetary Fund's charters to be really fraudulent, and they modified their verbs with adverbs and facts with adjectives just to confuse the people. So he sued and rewrote the construct for a global monetary font, which backdrops the insurance policies off of corporate structures for drawing money rights. The IMF was the holder of the bankruptcy notes, however, which forced many nations into servitude to the International Bank of Settlements. It created a fraudulent enforcement tool against the citizens of the world that were yoked into these fraudulent debts by their elected officials. So Russell is trying to fix this. He underwrote the insurance policies of the underwriters and put a new concept for a toll on the banks from pillaging resources from mining, like hard mining. rock mining, and force them to look at other resources like algae instead. For example, this means banks cannot control a country's resources just because they owe money to the IMF. This forces the banks into a position of balance. He also built a male and female spirit into the banking environment when before it was purely male to male, which scared the hell out of the Vatican because it was always man-to-man dealings, guy to guy, man to man. This brings commerce into a more natural masculine and feminine into the chemical wedding alchemy concepts, whatever that means. Now let's stop for a second and think about this. There is a war on women right now. Transgenders are taking over women's rights. Every time women finally breaks the glass ceiling, the LGBTQ community comes in and diverts that attempt. This is the corporations rebelling against Russell and his male-female banking system. And the World Economic Forum's Green New Deal is trying to herd all the people into a select few cities to preserve preserve nature because Russell basically forced them to stop raping and pillaging the planet of its resources. Everything that we're seeing going on all around us is because of Russell's work. Russell and David were flown to the Vatican for a meeting with the 13 family bloodlines, where Russell gave a presentation of his quantum banking structure. The World Bank and the International Monetary Fund families have never seen a system that was whole and complete like Russell's. For example, they didn't understand, as Russell did, that having a balance of male and female in the ebb and flow of commerce puts the world into a good way of achieving wealth instead of man dominance or caveman behavior. Divide and conquer, gimme, gimme, gimme. This made the Jesuits extremely angry, and it also made David Wynne angry during this meeting. And in that presentation, right in front of the Jesuits, David exposed himself as a fraud and his ties to the Rothschilds by starting a fist fight with Russell. It was a pretty big fight. This was the beginning of the end for the two. After returning from the meeting at the Vatican, the NSA, Department of Defense, and the CIA pulled Russell into a meeting to answer the question of what the ramifications of having the male and female energy to create commerce meant for the banking constituencies of the world. The Vatican requested Russell and David again, and this time David wasn't allowed to go into the secret room because they said David didn't have enough knowledge. At that time, David was completely pushed out and had no rights to the flag or anything whatsoever. Russell went into the meeting and contracted with the Vatican to control all military, banking, and commerce, contract performance, and answered many questions from cardinals and Jesuits, including the Opus Dei. They literally surrendered to him because he had all of the rights. According to Russell, no one had ever challenged the 13 families of the mathematical sequences of moving harmonics and energies through space and time, and they did not know anything about the new periodic tables he presented where the elements made actual sense and were in harmony. You could say that the Vatican, all of them, made everything up, and they knew the stuff already, but Russell uncovered it. Their surrender wasn't a happy one, however. They called him many, many names. They also tried to cast spells on him during the meeting, but he outsmarted them by asking them a simple question. How much money do they pay for their education? Because it's not his job to teach them what he knows. He got up, walked out, and they gave him everything he wanted. The 13 families would be forced to capitulate and stop stealing and profiting wars for profit, or starting wars for profit. Interpol and the CIA watched the meetings secretly, and when Russell returned to America once again, they too cursed him and said he amounted to nothing. However, they did learn the quantum grammar syntax system and still use it to this day. Since the surrender, the deep state continued to stay functioning based off the ignorance of the people and the militaries of the world. The militaries work for the post office, and he's the postmaster of the military. He still gets called in from time to time to discuss problems from around the world. According to Russell, the citizens are giving their freedom away by continuing to pay their taxes voluntarily and not do any research and studying of their own to basically find out what their rights are. Since 1999, there are no guidelines. No one reauthorized the continental government. No one has a claim of life because of the usury that's out there. Because the citizens only know one thing: credit and debt, or be a slave to the system and having to hustle every day. The education has to be put into place so we can create our own communities and government. And that's the problem. How do we educate everyone? Many of the bloodlines have asked him to join him. Russell has refused. Governments will continue to enslave their citizens until they get educated on the laws of the land and sea. The opening of the quantum banking system occurred in 2021. It is a safety net that uses the quantum grammar system and is backed by hard commodities such as gold, platinum, and other rare earth materials. The banks, globally, all use Russell's system. David Wynn, it appears, was somehow compromised by the bloodlines and almost sabotaged the entire program. David split off and started his own postmaster general ideologies and was mentor to Mark Christopher. David Straight wasn't recognized by Russell, and it is assumed he trained under David Wynn before he passed, or Mark Christopher. It is unclear as to David's teachings and Mark Christopher's declaration as to being the real postmaster general and how that works. You know, the old saying is the devil's in the details. Part 4 coming soon. Part 4. When Russell and David researched the birth certificate system, they found the system to be one of the most nefarious pieces to the empire of the 3 city-states to capture us all as chattel, property, and slaves to the 3 cities, Washington, D.C., the Vatican in Rome, and the City of London. These are the Illuminati's empire city-states. According to the charters, when you are born on this planet, a registered nurse will have the parent sign a birth certificate, and they will inform you that you cannot leave the hospital with a baby or the baby until you sign it. Well, this is a lie. It's kidnapping. The baby's full name is in all capital letters on the birth certificate, and the mother is told to sign it in cursive, which is considered necromancy or communication with the dead. The only place you see a person's name in all capital letters is actually on a tombstone where they are dead and buried. That is the sign for a dead entity. So, now when you are born into this world, you are considered a dead entity or lost at sea because of the shipping war that we are in. So when that document is signed in cursive, you are committing necromancy. This is the massive corporate construct by the 3-city empire to keep you enslaved. You are no longer considered alive. Rather, you are referred to as dead cargo. At sea, there are corporations, private entities, and recreational people sailing. In between the mix of legal travel, there are pirates who report to no country or corporation. They steal, kill, and destroy with impunity, and no one can stop them. When you look at this in relation to the esoteric symbolism behind the Vatican, London City, the P2 Mason Lodges, the Knights of Malta, the Knights of Columbus, and the Jesuits, all of these groups of people are the secret lodges on this planet that John F. Kennedy was referring to as pugnant. They utilize this shipping warfare system to conduct commerce around the world and, like pirates, capture and seize cargo, people, and land. When a private when a entity or a pirate captures a flag, they sew a golden tassel all the way around it, signaling they are now the controller of that ship and the cargo and crew. The Vatican, by a cursive necromancy signature, captured your ship and refers to it as dead cargo, owning your body and soul. The Vatican is the great whore of Babylon that the Bible talks about. This whole system is based on the maritime and admiralty of the sea, or laws of the sea. All of the corporations on earth, including the corporations with the empire of the 3 city-states especially, contribute to the strengths and existence of this system. The Vatican was using international admiralty and maritime law of the sea to presume everyone missing, dead, or lost at sea. Remember in the Bible when Satan accuses man at the front of the throne of God of already being dead? When you look further at the esotericism behind that, Satan is attempting to mirror what God did. God then destroyed the world by flood. Lucifer is trying to do the same thing. He is killing all of the people on the planet by saying the people are dead, missing, or lost at sea by falsely using the birth certificate system. So this esotericism is clearly being demonstrated by the Vatican with what is going on. So when Russell set the system back up and went to each location, the post offices, he started at the Universal Postal System in Bern, Switzerland, and he informed the leaders of the charter that the charter has been disqualified, and Russell reopened it up properly and placing himself as the Universal Postal Master General in Bern, Switzerland. Each time Russell did this at every post office, he reconstituted the Vatican. Now you have a mirrored version of what once was, but now it is corrected. Think Q and him talking about mirrors. The deep state didn't go anywhere. They just had to adjust or adopt to the new system that Russell created. There is no longer any ability to create contract fraud in that system. You can't lie, cheat, or steal, or create a loophole in that contract because it is a mathematical certified contract. It is perfect grammar. What it says is what it means, and what it means is what it says. It is certified forward and backward, so they can't take it to court and say what it meant was, or what it is supposed to mean, or what it will mean. It is in the time of now being now and 20 years from now. There is no past and future sense in the grammar. It is now time. So it applies now and will apply the same in 100 years down the road. So in 100 years, it will still say today. So if you violate the contract, it will be obvious and will be a simple court case. This eliminates the opportunity for fraud, racketeering, etc. Russell, with this concept, has taken control of the entire planet. He mirrored or resubstantiated the contract that was there and made it correct. He did this by using grammar correctly with his syntax quantum program and using the true meaning of the word correctly. Don't forget what God talks about, the Word, and the Word will set you free. The Word is Jesus. And when God spoke everything into existence, he spoke it with a word. So I think Russell is turning things right back around. And I got so much more to report, so stay tuned. Part 5 of 5, please watch this to the end. It's so important. In 2017, Russell Gould visited the IRS building in Washington, D.C. They were supposed to leave the United States at the end of the third and final international bankruptcy in 1999. The IRS still operated as a collection agency for the Federal Reserve, so Russell tried to put a stop to it. Russell walked into the Federal Reserve Board of Governors and asked why this building was docked on his land. The board was stunned. He then proceeded to levy a fine against them for having a vessel docked on his property illegally. he fined them 17 million tons of gold and announced that he wants to use it to assist, get this, President Donald John Trump and Secretary of Defense James Mattis and the rest of the military and the people of the country to resubstantiate the government here and create a new monetary system under his bank and place the values backed by gold. God. Russell was quoted in a message to Trump, "I authorize what it is you're doing, and I am behind you with the clean out." Unquote. It is unclear if Russell was able to speak with Trump or have a meeting with Trump. There really is no evidence that I can find linking Trump to Gould. I tried. Hours and hours and hours I tried. The IRS building remained there in D.C., but it is empty and or closed because the Federal Reserve quietly opened it back up in Puerto Rico. How sneaky. No one is allowed to do business in D.C., however, at the IRS vessel, thanks to Russell. However, the Tri-City Horror Babylon continued their operations regardless of everything Russell tried to do. He was definitely a thorn in their side, and they had no authorization or jurisdiction to kill him. They did use the CIA to capture and torture and try to coerce him to release the flag. That was pretty bad on him. It was a really bad situation. But he refused. Russell's biggest problem was he didn't have enough resources, money, and time to fight against the beast system. He overlooked one factor that could have made us all free by now. He did not alert the military chain of command of what he was trying to do. During the Obama administration, the military was going to form a coup against Obama, but instead elected Donald Trump to help clean the deep state out of Washington, D.C. The real key here to our freedom is Russell's intelligence. Read between the lines here when I read this again. He boldly told the Federal Reserve Board of Governors that he is giving the flag to Trump. What gave him the confidence to say that to a den of thieves? Perhaps that was another bad move on his part because Trump was president at that time and now they know of the white hat's intentions? I don't know. However, after researching for dozens of hours, my time, watching many interviews with Russell and David, and reading as much material that I could get my hands on, I found that the Rothschilds definitely infiltrated Russell's partner, David Wynn. David Wynn tried everything he could do to capture the flag from Russell. There's no doubt about it. David didn't have the courage to go to D.C., but certainly had the courage to help Russell open up the Philadelphia branch with him. This is where we lose the trail. According to Russell, David was working for the Clintons during their entire process. That's a big red flag. Russell knew it, but warned him that those relationships are going to burn him. If Russell went to D.C. and captured our sovereignty back from Britain, but allowed David to help reopen Philadelphia, then what rights does David have to the flag? My opinion is he doesn't, and Russell didn't put him on the board of directors. They did have a falling out, and Russell somehow ended the alignment between them, or the arrangement, or the agreement, or the country. I don't know. Regardless if he did, David was never the real postmaster general. He never went to D.C. David and his mentees are operating out of and away from Russell's command and jurisdiction. That makes anyone under David's leadership fraudulent and most likely working for the Vatican, or perhaps maybe to make a buck. But my guess is they're working for the Whore of Babylon. And it gets worse. In one interview I was watching, the host was an XRP QFS cheerleader, and he was excited to have Russell on. But he wasn't educated enough on his own show about the history of Russell and a history of Russell, what he did. And during the show, Russell warned him and his 100,000 followers that he has never heard of the quantum financial system and has major concerns about what he's hearing. He asked who was on the board of trustees for it. The host couldn't answer because, just as I had suspected, XRP and QFS is a deep state trap. I'm sorry, but it is. What I discovered was Russell's system is the quantum banking system, QBS, and not the quantum financial system, QFS. One word changes the entire thing. Remember when I researched Ripple and who runs it? Well, it is the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. Russell has stated many times in many interviews that those groups are fraudulent, satanic entities still trying to enslave us and keep up the facade. The real and true cryptocurrency creator and patent holder is Russell J. Gould, which he created in 2001. Everyone stole his patents. In fact, check this out. Russell received a call from David Schwartz, Ripple's CTO, aka Satoshi Nakamoto, Bitcoin guy, in 2006, and asked permission for the rights to use Russell's crypto algorithm to create Bitcoin. Russell asked, how would it benefit humanity? And Schwartz replied, it won't. Schwartz verbally said to him he just wanted to make a lot of money. The QRP QFS system could be tied to FedNow. It could be. I don't have any proof of it yet. And they most likely will give away crypto for you to sign up. But it's the beast system. It is. It's a trap, I'm sorry to say. And the med beds and all the rumors we have heard is a lie from the deep state. None of QFS and its promises have anything to do with the real Postmaster General, and I would steer clear from this deception and influencers who peddle this. Yes, that means some of the big names spreading this lie are ignorant, blackmailed, or just simply paid off. So what are we left with? Where is our hope? Kim Clement, a Christian prophet who predicted Trump's presidency, said that one man will pick up a stone and stand in front of all of the bloodlines, and they will laugh at him. I believe this man is Russell J. Gould. Kim continued that the Lord said the plan is so brilliant that it could only be given by me. Well, the plan is brilliant. Then Kim said the name of the man would be Gould. Gould? Gold? Is it a coincidence that Russell's last name is Gould? Gold? And there's more. There are over a dozen prophets who predicted Trump winning and Russell's accomplishments. Mark Taylor, Charlie Shamp, Greg Scroggins, Chris Reed, Kat Kerr, Robin Bullock, Rich Vera, Tracy Cook, Troy Black, Kevin Zadai, Mario Murillo, Paula White, and Anna Marie Strawhand, just to name a few. All prophesied Trump will take it all down. Russell Gould is a Christian. He doesn't talk much about it, but I figured it out. I believe he is called by the Father to take down the deep state. I couldn't find any data on Trump and Gould ever meeting, though. Even if Trump was part of the deep state, it doesn't matter. God is using Russell moving forward. And eventually God will give Russell Gould the resources, armies, and finances he needs to once and for all take out the deep state and put in the quantum banking system. I put my hope and faith that Trump is truly working with Russell secretly. I think that's what's going on. And this is what Q meant when he said, nothing can stop what is coming. Hope this blessed you.